Part 58. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 573. Since Eiji Niizuma has already admitted defeat quite calmly, then according to the previous agreement with Makoto Takahashi, Eiji Niizuma should start writing the comic in the name of Makoto Shinkai. Yujiro was right when he heard this. The original plan of Makoto Takahashi and Eiji Niizuma should have been like this. But unfortunately, plans can never keep up with the so-called changes. The A Certain Scientific Railgun comic serialized in the monthly magazine has just ended the A Certain Scientific Railgun mass production plan that has a dramatic plot and makes readers love and hate it, and officially entered the Angel Fall plot, and according to the previous agreement between Makoto Takahashi and Eiji Niizuma, whenever it involves the plot that is mainly about the young boy Kamijutuma, the comic manuscript of the manga A Certain Scientific Railgun will be handed over to Eiji Niizuma. So the original plan had to be put aside. After all, it was impossible for Eiji Niizuma to serialize 3 comics in monthly and weekly magazines at the same time like a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. Of course, for Eiji Niizuma, as long as he can draw interesting comics, it doesn't matter if the new serialization is slightly delayed. Compared with Eiji Niizuma, who gave Yujiro a headache, Yoshida was almost tortured crazy by a cartoonist under his command. The cartoonist here was naturally not the Chuyuni cartoonist Makoto Takahashi, who was very well behaved recently, but the author of the comic Hunter x Hunter, Xiao Heidao, who has been quite popular since the serialization. Xiao Heidao, a cartoonist who was lured and coerced by the editor-in-chief Yoshida, has become more and more lazy and negative since the serialization of Hunter x Hunter. I don't want to continue drawing, let's just cut it off. After the performance of a certain episode dropped by one place, the little sea otter began to complain to Yoshida. The result is naturally needless to say. The little sea otter's resistance was naturally suppressed by a certain editor with strong means and various temptations that would kill people. No. I will be exhausted if I continue to draw like this, Mr. Yoshida, do you know? I started coughing up blood yesterday. After knowing that arguing with reason is a useless means, the little sea otter decisively changed his strategy and began to use the tactic of pretending to be sick and pitiful against Yoshida, but all this is in vain. How can a mere little sea otter beat Yoshida, an editor-in-chief who has all his talent points added to black-bellied and poisonous tongue? In short, although the extremely clumsy strategies and tactics of the little sea otter have no effect on Yoshida, facing this extremely childish combat every day, the weekly editor Yoshida said that he is really tired, well, mentally exhausted. So in the recent period, when Yoshida came to Takahashi Makoto to collect the comic manuscript, he would unconsciously shift the topic of how is the comic plot to how to train, teach, the little sea otter. Ahaha, it's just as I expected. After listening to Yoshida's complaints, Takahashi Makoto put on an expression of I knew it would be like this, patted the other's shoulder with pity, and said with some sympathy, my cat, from the setting of the universe, this can't be regarded as the little sea otter's responsibility. Well, in fact, everything is the choice of Steins Gate. Thinking about the old thief Togashi and the readers who were cheated in those years, Takahashi Makoto really thinks that Yoshida's recent experience is not a big deal. You know, the real troubles and difficulties will not come until after the end chapter. Tisk. Is this also the choice of Steins Gate? Yoshida pouted in dissatisfaction, took out a note from his bag, and threw it in front of Takahashi Makoto. Ah-Cheng, after you read the note left by Hirameru-kun, can you still say that? Not being able to complete the serialized comics due to back pain, isn't that normal? Takahashi Makoto glanced at the message on the note and looked at Yoshida with unfriendly eyes. Hey, my dear cat, since Little Otter is unwell, the suspension of publication can be forgiven, right? Don't you think that so-called cartoonists have no human rights? Tisk, I never thought that my cat would be so crazy. If Hirameru-kun really had backache, I wouldn't say anything. Yoshida looked at the note on the table, exuding a black aura that was almost tangible, and gritted his teeth and said, "The key is that Hiramarukun invited a bunch of people to play mahjong at home when I went to collect the comic manuscripts." Huh? Inviting friends to play mahjong? After hearing what Yoshida said, Takahashi Makoto showed a look of astonishment for the first time. The reason is, it feels that the overlap between Little Otter and Togashi is getting higher and higher, right? Little Otter is really not doing his job properly. Hey, Aiken, do you think you are qualified to say that, if a part of the body that cannot be described is cut off, Yoshida's demeanor at this moment can definitely be called a boudoir woman, and there is absolutely no sense of disobedience. The reason why Hiramarukun has become like this is all because of your influence. Take the child to find other cartoonists to play Go, humph. I did whatever it took to train the next generation, ahem, I tried my best, okay. The reason why the little sea otter became like that is actually the world's fault. Or maybe it's Tokyomi's fault, but you are a cat, you actually put all this on me. Makoto Takahashi expressed dissatisfaction with this sudden blame. Yada. Yada. Let Jingzonghao Jisang take the blame. That's great. After all, the uncle who is going to play Light Genji Project is a good person, and the title of hero and blamebacker is very similar in terms of restoration and compatibility. I have some inexplicable sympathy for Aiken, the Jingzonghao Jisang you mentioned. Yoshida didn't know what he thought of, and the corners of his mouth twitched, and then he asked carefully and tentatively, "Hey Aiken, I heard Yujiro say, are you planning to start a new comic?" After the monthly serialization of White Rabbit Candy is completed, I plan to start serializing it. Makoto Takahashi suddenly stopped mid-sentence, and looked at Yoshida in surprise. He asked with some uncertainty, "My familiar cat, regarding the new serialization, let me confirm first. Is it me you just asked, or is it me and the fictional manga artist Shinkai Makoto created by the King of Black Flame?" Of course it's you. Wait, Yoshida's reaction speed this time is already 1/10 that of Pai Shen, right? What do you mean? After the monthly manga White Rabbit Candy is completed, are you going to start 2 new serials in the monthly and weekly magazines under the names of Phoenix in Murama and Shinkai Makoto? Ahem, my beloved is a cat. This is just your guess. I didn't say anything. Should I praise Takahashi Makoto for his deception, which is very characteristic of China? Can you tell me more about the 2 new serials? After a moment of silence, Yoshida chose the thing that he cared more about, or was more interested in. As for stopping Makoto Takahashi's willful behavior, Yoshida said that he has not started writing his suicide note yet. Of course I can't tell you the name. But the general plot. Seeing Yoshida's expectant expression, Takahashi Makoto showed a twitching smile on his face, but prohibited matters. Yoshida, cursing MMP at this time is definitely much better than being suddenly silent, really. In short, the plots of the 2 comics are the kind that I like very much. Makoto Takahashi held his chin and thought for a while, then waved his hands and said famously, "It is the kind that can make my soul pleasant, that kind of comic." A comic that makes your soul pleasure? Alas. A certain editor in charge let out an inexplicable long sigh. Because after hearing special spoilers like Takahashi Makoto, Yoshida seemed to have seen the tragedy that was about to happen in the future. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 574. Because a certain editor-in-chief has appeared at his home quite frequently recently, Makoto Takahashi expressed that he was not surprised at all when he saw Yoshida outside the agreed time for collecting manga manuscripts. But today's situation is a little special. "Well, Chen, we came here today to ask for your help." Before Yoshida could finish his words, he was interrupted by the surprised Takahashi Makoto. Damn it! Is this the rhythm of the end of the world?" Looking at the man and woman standing in front of him, Takahashi Makoto was so frightened that he threw his paintbrush aside, stood up in panic, opened the drawer, and said to himself, he said comfortingly, "Calm down. At this time, you should use the time machine. No, going back to the past doesn't seem to be able to avoid the end of the world, right? So the world line should be changed." "I mean, Chen, what are you surprised about?" Looking at Makoto Takahashi's strange behavior, Yoshida thought for a moment and roughly guessed what Makoto Takahashi was thinking, then his face, which had been normal just now, immediately turned horribly gloomy, and he shouted angrily in a cold voice, "Hundan! Do you think I am that kind of fate? My beloved is a cat. Although your fate is not as brutal as the legendary Tianchi Lone Star, you definitely don't have the exaggerated femininity of the girl pickup guy Kamijo boy." Takahashi Makoto stopped his secondary act of looking for a time machine to change the world line and patted Yoshida on the shoulder sympathetically. Regardless of the mixed look of embarrassment and depression on the other person's face, he comforted him in a tone full of pity. "So a guy like you who is destined to live alone actually brought a girl to the Devil King Phoenix Academy's fierce realm barrier today. According to the setting of the world is in turmoil, evildoers will appear. What is the end of the world? I'm afraid it's coming soon, right? I'm so sorry that I'm not destined to be a woman. I'm so sorry that I've been single until now." After a brief silence, Yoshida gritted his teeth and let out a roar that made the women around him laugh wildly. Speaking of Yoshida's brief silence before, was it a normal reaction to being unable to accept the truth for a while? Or are you accumulating energy for the roaring skill later? Ahaha, Phoenix Academy Kuma-sensei is indeed as interesting as the rumors. The woman who followed Yoshida glanced at Yoshida strangely and let out a hearty laugh. "But Phoenix Academy Kuma-sensei, you misunderstood. My relationship with Yoshida-senpai is not what you imagined." "Huh? Senior," after Makoto Takahashi repeated the key words revealed by the other party, a look of disgust immediately appeared on his face, and he spat dissatisfiedly, "Hey. It turns out that you are not the plaything of my familiar cat, but he's a lackey of the organization." "Eh? Plaything? This statement is really..." The woman looked at Yoshida, who looked innocent after hearing this, and instantly felt that the atmosphere became a little awkward. In order to ease the sudden embarrassment, the woman asked in a low voice, like changing the subject, "Yoshida Sr., does the organization that Master Jujhen of the Phoenix Institute refer to?" "Alas." Yoshida sighed helplessly, and nodded with a wry smile, "It's just as you thought. The so-called organization refers to the weekly editorial department, and we, the responsible editors who are affiliated with the weekly editorial department, they are so-called lackeys, according to the setting of that guy Aiken." That's the situation." Makoto Takahashi ignored the low-pitched questions and answers from the two editors in charge, took out his mobile phone from his white coat and continued talking on his own. "Yes. The other party's intelligence officers have already found rescue. Humph, it's not necessary at all. It's just 2-5 scum. Well, I'll tell you the details after I complete the magic seal of cannot communicate with living people. Congruent. As you can see, this is Makoto Takahashi, who is called the evil cartoonist by the editorial department. The Phoenix Academy is really fierce." Yoshida saw Takahashi Makoto at the end with unknown. After the phone call, I started to give a brief introduction to the juniors around me, although I really wanted to add a supplementary introduction of "this is what everyone calls the second-grade manga artist," but I saw Makoto Takahashi rummaging through the box. Yoshida's mutual introduction naturally cannot continue. "Chen, this is, by the way, what are you looking for?" "Oh, I found it." Makoto Takahashi took out a small black notebook that both of them were familiar with, then with a smile that read pleasure and evil on his face, he picked up the pen beside the table. Asked the already somewhat dull woman next to Yoshida, "So, what is your name?" Looking at the well-known black notebook in Takahashi Makoto's hand, the woman who came with Yoshida fell silent, and the smile on her face became stiff. Hey, Chen, that kind of thing, is just a figment of your own imagination in the comics. Don't scare the newcomers in our editorial department like this, Yoshida complained with some dissatisfaction. Okay, it's a joke. That's it? This person next to me is a joke to scare people? Humph, my beloved cat, you seem to have said something outrageous. Makoto Takahashi laughed inexplicably, closed the small black notebook in his hand, and then picked up the table. He turned on the remote control and switched the TV channel. Now please open your eyes and take a good look at the other side of this world. There happened to be a piece of news broadcast on TV about criminals taking hostages. The suspect's name is. Makoto Takahashi wrote down the suspect's name directly on the small black notebook in his hand in front of the two editors in charge, and then pointed to the clock on the wall, revealing an expression that made him break out in a cold sweat. With a smile, my beloved cats, are you ready? There are still 40 seconds. 40 seconds is very short. If the computer usually stores a large amount of things that cannot be mentioned or described, this time is not enough to turn on the computer, but for Yoshida and the new editor at this moment, these 40 seconds, every second is so tortured. Under the watchful eyes of Yoshida and the new editor, 40 seconds later, the TV station that was paying attention to the incident suddenly broadcast a piece of news that the suspect suddenly collapsed and died while covering his chest, and then, liar, liar, right. Hey, this isn't true, is it? Then, Yoshida and the new editor were shocked. Although I don't know why before, my familiar cat, you didn't stop me from starting a new series through persuasion as usual. Makoto Takahashi gently shook the small black notebook in his hand, showing a menacing smile, but when I saw the people around you today, I understood. It turns out that the organization considered that you, the cat of my family, were not sufficiently powerful in combat, so they specially sent auxiliary personnel this time. No, actually the reason why we came to you today is. Yoshida recovered from the shock and tried to explain to Takahashi Makoto, but the visual effect was not very satisfactory. My beloved cat, don't deny it yet. Makoto Takahashi turned his attention to the female editor and put on an expression of I have seen through the truth. The organization may have realized direct persuasion is totally useless to me, so I think you guys here today are actually trying to find something else to distract me, so as to interfere with my plan to start a new series. That's not it? Wrong. Yes, when Yoshida learned that Takahashi Makoto planned to start a new series, he decisively chose to report it to the editor-in-chief of Bottle without hiding it. After discussing with many colleagues on the editorial side, the editor proposed find something to make a certain second-grader cartoonist Hohoin Yoshima does this kind of inferior attention diversion battle plan. But now, the two editors in charge, whose intentions were revealed, had embarrassed looks on their faces. After showing his mysterious strength, he then went straight to the point. Takahashi Makoto's negotiation skills are still as powerful as ever. The intelligence capabilities and layout capabilities on the editorial side, well, they are still as bad as ever. After Makoto Takahashi scoffed, he looked at the two editors in charge in front of him with interest, with an expectant smile on his face. So, let's talk about it. What is the commission that the editor used to divert my attention, exactly? We want to ask for your help. Not noticing the corners of Yoshida's twitching mouth, the female editor pondered for a moment and then decisively took charge of the entire editorial side. According to the rules of the universe of equivalent exchange. With Yoshida looking at him with a look like I knew it would be like this, Makoto Takahashi violently interrupted the female editor's words and raised his head. He held the small black book in his hand, with a joyful smile on his face. Before you tell me your request, tell me first, what is your name? Can you not say it? It's just a video after the plot of the movie was edited, it's so easy to believe it. Humans nowadays are so easy to be dominated. After sending away the two responsible editors, Takahashi Makoto casually handed over the little black. The notebook was thrown aside, it seems that it is a very wise approach to obtain some unfinished movie videos in advance through special means. Although I know this is the editor's plan. Picking up the note with the address on the table, Takahashi Makoto showed an expectant smile, but considering the pleasure that new toys can bring after purchasing. And this address, it seems from visual inspection that it belongs to a junior that the witch is very fond of. Is he probably also there? Well, this kind of interesting thing, for the Demon King's family, is simply a tailor-made copy. While Makoto Takahashi was talking, a man and a woman at a certain place suddenly shivered involuntarily. This is the so-called big universe rule, right? Or rather, Stein's, Gates' choice. In this chapter, a certain cat just wants to tell you readers, please don't tell others your name casually. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 575. One weekend after communicating with Yoshida and the new female editor, he temporarily put aside his usual work of completing manga manuscripts. Makoto Takahashi took Rina and his 2 children and planned to have a just leave. There is nothing wrong with travel as it should be, but in fact, the purpose of Makoto Takahashi's trip was to complete a commission from editor-in-chief Yoshida, nothing more. Of course, it is also possible to do some private things in the process of completing the commission, such as letting Takahashi Makoto obtain pleasure. This is a dispute between a middle-class cartoonist and a responsible editor from the beginning. Some indescribable deals struck. According to the information provided by my familiar cat, it should be here, right? Makoto Takahashi's eyes moved from the ancient-looking apartment building in front of him to the note in his hand, and he pondered. After a moment, he turned around and picked up the little lowly Rin who was pulling up her trouser legs, and asked Rina in a doubtful tone, who was holding CG on the side, "Hey, witch, is this really the one who can be your successor? Where you live? It's not a successor, it's just a favorite junior." Rina tilted her head and blinked, then said with a slight smile, "When I was in the CEO agency before, that kid was even considered a newcomer. Not good, but working hard in every aspect. Tisk, to be hidden in a place like this." Makoto Takahashi held Rin with one hand, and slowly pulled out the demon sword from his white coat with the other hand. He said with a rather unhappy look on his face without looking back. He said to Rina, "Which, although I made an agreement with you before that I will not kill that kid with all my strength, but as for teaching that child how to behave, there is no problem, right? Ah, Chen-kun, have you misunderstood something? I just like that child very much." Although Rina said worried words, both her tone and the sinister smile on her face seemed to have decided everything that would happen next. It's a pity that Makoto Takahashi didn't look back, otherwise he wouldn't have noticed Rina. Abnormal. "Father, actually, we've you." The child CG, who was watching his father being misled in Rina's arms, was about to say something to Takahashi Makoto, but his mother gently covered his mouth. Even though CG tried to struggle, he was just a child. Facing Rina, who was both mother and adult at the same time, he fell into silence after a moment. "CG, you have to remember one thing." Takahashi Makoto naturally did not observe everything. Instead, he rang the doorbell with the sword in his hand while not forgetting to conduct the so-called Demon King to his child all the time. Successor's elite education. The so-called Demon King was actually once served as a god by humans, but later he just desecrated the holiness that belongs to gods, just like I once did. Spreading dog food on my property early in the morning. "Who are you?" The doorbell had just finished ringing, and a woman who looked like she was hungover opened the door with a look of resentment and her hands folded in front of her chest. Looking at the 4 members of Makoto Takahashi's family with a rather ugly expression, speaking of which, for a woman who is single in her late 30s and not yet married, The conversation between Makoto Takahashi and her family is indeed a bit strange in a sense. Due to the intrusion of this older, unmarried woman, a middle school cartoonist's education of his children was also interrupted. "Woman, you have good courage." Makoto Takahashi waved the devil's sword in his hand, glanced at the woman in front of him, and nodded with satisfaction. "In the face of killing millions of humans and plundering tens of millions of living beings, the devil's sword can still compete with the small and weak anger of human beings. So, who are you?" Unceremoniously interrupting Makoto Takahashi's delusion of winning, the older woman took out her cell phone and said threateningly, "You still have 30 seconds. Give me time to explain, otherwise I will call the police." "Wait a minute, Mr. Kuma from the Phoenix Academy, you're already here." The new female editor who had followed Yoshida to Takahashi Makoto's house suddenly popped up from behind an older, unmarried woman, with an awkward smile on her face. "Although Yoshida-senpai once said it, when I experienced it myself, I really felt a little, ah. Tisk, were you actually beaten to the punch by the lackeys of the organization?" Makoto Takahashi curled his lips in displeasure, withdrew the magic sword in his hand, and took out his mobile phone from his white coat. "Hey, it's me." While Takahashi Makoto was on the phone with an unknown person, the female newcomer editor quickly explained to the older unmarried woman who opened the door in the shortest possible words, while Rina looked curiously at the two people talking in front of her. "A woman? You mean that guy?" He pointed at Makoto Takahashi, who was holding a child and talking on the phone. The expression on the face of an older, unmarried woman was quite exciting. She questioned the awkward-looking new female editor in front of her with a puzzled tone. "Is that the cartoonist you talked about before?" Hey, that guy, couldn't he be a fake cartoonist? Although his personality is indeed a bit." The new female editor glanced at Makoto Takahashi and explained in a low voice, "But, if it turns out to be true, he is the manga artist Phoenix Academy Kuma-sensei." "Okay." As if she believed the new female editor, the older unmarried woman turned around and walked into the room, muttering softly, "Tisk, if that guy is really the cartoonist Howin Kuma, those kids will be excited all day." A moment later, Takahashi Makoto's family of 4 was surrounded by 4 boys and girls. "Oh, it's a real person, it's really the cartoonist Howin Kuma." The energetic girl's eyes sparkled, and she handed Takahashi Makoto a signed version, and said expectantly, "Teacher Howin Kuma, can you sign for me?" "I refuse." Takahashi Makoto directly rejected the girl's request, and at the same time stared at the glasses next to the girl with a gloomy face. The man said in a warning tone, "Hey, the boy with glasses over there, you should know the sentencing of starting from 3 years and up to the death penalty, right? But I can guarantee that before you are sentenced, I will definitely send you to hell to repent 10,000 times. So, if you dare to stare at my ren again, be careful that I will bless you with the blessing of spending the rest of your life in darkness." "Hey, that's not a blessing but a curse, uncle." The boy with glasses pushed his glasses and complained unhappily. A friendly reminder, Takahashi Makoto, who has a family at the moment, is definitely old enough to be called an uncle by underage boys and girls. Tisk, it turns out that time is a butcher knife, even when facing a second-year cartoonist, it is merciless. "Ah, you know." The blonde girl with a delicate face like a doll tilted her head and asked the female new editor, how Kuma, teacher?" "Yeah, that's right." The new editor called Ayano seemed to understand the girl's words that were not expressive enough. "Didn't I tell you before? Considering your situation, I specially asked the editor-in-chief for a cartoonist to teach you. I only want Kota." "Kota is enough." The girl's decisive and resolute speech made Ayano editor pause. The glasses boy and the energetic girl who spoke before showed a malicious smile, and at the same time focused their eyes on the boy next to the blonde girl, who had been silent since the beginning. And the boy who was surrounded by everyone, his face flushed instantly. "Yeah, this boy seems very simple, and he also has the potential to become a toy that makes me get pleasure." After Takahashi Makoto's eyes stayed on the boy with his head down for a moment, he showed an expectant smile on his face. "Yeah, that's the kind of momentum you need." Takahashi Makoto raised his thumb and said to the blonde girl, "Girl, you have a lot of ideas, come and learn to draw comics with me. As long as I have time, that's enough." The girl's tone was still as firm as before, and that will was also unshakable. "I couldn't log in today. It kept saying time out." Sigh. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 576. A major event that has recently troubled the editors of the weekly Shounen Jump is the arrival of a genius, or can be said to be a monster painter. It can even be said that this artist is the most evil and genius existence in the history of comics, bar none. Writing this, I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network Rightward Arrow. Please note that whether the genius or monster modification mentioned here only describes the painter, not the cartoonist. Although it is true that painters with superb painting skills far surpass many cartoonists in terms of their professional and solid painting foundation and their potential after changing careers as cartoonists, but this does not mean that every master any painter of any level can become a cartoonist. Shiina Mashiro has been painting in her grandfather's studio since she was a child. She is a world-class talented painter. Because she likes comics very much, her dream is to become a cartoonist. She is often immersed in the world of comics. When she draws seriously, she pays no attention to the things around her. Without realizing it, he is often so tired that he curls up under the table and falls asleep, so according to common sense, a world-class painter like Mashiro who is persistent and willing to work hard for his dream of becoming a cartoonist, if he wants to become a cartoonist, it's not that difficult. However, this does not mean that everyone with master-level painting skills can become a cartoonist, let alone a cartoonist who is called a genius level. For example, Landai's classmate, who has had very strong painting skills since he was a child. Although he has now become a mainstay among the younger generation of cartoonists, he has also experienced the baptism and blow of failure again and again. After all, Landai once because of after my uncle passed away, I wasted a lot of time. Finally, with the support of my good friends, the encouragement of my sister, and my unremitting efforts for many years, I was able to achieve what I have achieved today. To put it simply, a painter is not the same as a cartoonist. Therefore, when Mashiro Shiina, a talented painter, just set foot in the comics industry, he suffered an unprecedented setback. I have to admit that the painting talent of the girl Mashiro is super awesome, but unfortunately, a good and successful comic requires not only certain painting skills, but the plot of the comic itself is also very important. Even from a certain middle school second grade for the cartoonist's original version comic One Punch Man, what if the comic style is full of magic? If the comic itself has a strong storyline, even Stickman Brawl will be equally interesting. The comics that readers observe, whether they are touching and passionate, or sadistic and healing, or even plain and healing, are the same as the source of the plot of the novel, they all come from the life of the creator itself. All my talent points are focused on painting. I have been practicing painting since I was a child, so I can become a world-class painter. All this is in line with the rules of equivalent exchange, and it is also the choice of Steins Gate, but for the girl Mashiro, this has become the biggest constraint on her career change as a manga artist. Therefore, even if a girl is called a genius, has unparalleled master-level painting skills, is immersed in the world of painting, and can barely take care of herself, it is difficult to create a good and successful comic. It's not just because girls lack the so-called daily life, but more importantly, it's because girls lack the accumulation of life and thinking about life. To put it simply, the biggest problem that restricts Mashiro Shoujo from changing her career from painter to manga artist is to change what she sees into what she thinks. Let's give an example. On his way to the store to buy bread on his bicycle, the boy saw his favorite goddess being accosted by a wealthy second-generation man driving a luxury car. Don't rush to complain about this bloody scene. From the perspective of an observer, the above is what the girl Mashiro saw. It is also a scene that the girl Mashiro can directly show through paintings, that is, what she sees. But if the scene were transformed into a comic, it would be a bloody but classic story of Dragon Quest and the Evil Knight. The young man riding his new chariot is the Knight of Justice. The bread can be regarded as the holy grail that the knight is looking for, which can evoke miracles. What he sees and hears on the way to buy bread can be regarded as the daily adventure life of the knight, or as a witness to the growth of a knight. The favorite goddess girl can be regarded as the princess in the bloody and classic routine, always captured and imprisoned by evil beings. As for the rich second generation driving a luxury car, luxury car, it can be regarded as a legendary and ferocious magic dragon, and the rich second generation can be regarded as the final enemy of the evil knight after the Justice Knight defeats the evil dragon. An ordinary scene turned into a fantasy story, an epic story of a hero's growth. This is what I want. And when the girl Mashiro wants to change her career from a painter to a manga artist, she naturally wants to change what she sees into what she thinks. So do you understand why Takahashi Makoto became the guide of the girl Mashiro's job change? Maybe you can understand it if you look at the above-mentioned way of thinking that once made Yoshida think this is so weird and weird. Of course, in addition to the reason why a responsible editor strongly recommended it in front of the editor-in-chief of Bottle, the editor of the weekly magazine naturally has other considerations. For example, Makoto Takahashi completed the manga manuscript very quickly. This condition, which seems to have nothing to do with teaching the girl Mashiro, has eliminated many cartoonists who were listed as candidates by the editor. The so-called genius painter title can only be regarded as a publicity tool and a gimmick for the editor of the weekly. Compared with the serial cartoonists who have been serialized in the weekly and have begun to make profits for the weekly, the editor of the weekly side is more inclined to the latter. After all, if the cartoonist's own serialization progress is delayed by guiding the girl Mashiro to change jobs, this method of exchanging benefits that have not yet been obtained for benefits that have already occurred, for the editor of the weekly, this is quite a waste. Therefore, Makoto Takahashi, who is able to carry out dual serializations in both monthly and weekly magazines at the same time, and even wants to start a new serialization, is definitely a suitable candidate for the editorial side of the weekly magazine. The job of guiding the girl Mashiro to change jobs will not only not hinder the progress of manga artist Shoin Yoshima's serialization, but it will also take the opportunity to temporarily put a second-year manga artist's plan to start a new series on hold. Another example is the issue of painting style. From the comic DN that was serialized at the beginning, then the comic Rebellion, and the two monster comics with different styles that were serialized at the same time, and then to the comic One Punch Man that is currently being serialized, a certain middle-level cartoonist has during the serialization process, a variety of different comic styles have been shown, although the painting talent is really not comparable to that of a world-class painter, a certain second-rate cartoonist has an almost comprehensive painting style. For the girl Mashiro, she is definitely the most suitable guide, bar none. Another example. Girl, follow me and study comics. In the future, I will need you to help me complete that comic with the Lord of Black Flame. Don't refuse it yet. Makoto Takahashi raised his hand to stop him and wanted to reiterate again, I just want to be free. Mashiro, the girl from Tai, stared at the boy Sarada, who still looked embarrassed over there. Of course, according to the principle of equivalent exchange, I will teach you how to transform this boy into a private toy that is exclusive to you. Or servant. Sarada. The girl Mashiro turned her head and looked at the boy Sarada beside her, and then nodded in agreement without hesitation. Hey. This kind of thing, don't you need to consider my opinion? Taking care of Mashiro is already quite a troublesome thing, but now I heard such an incredible statement from a certain second-year manga artist. Sarada boy, your current psychological shadow area is quite large according to visual inspection. Man. I believe in me who believes in you. Makoto Takahashi waved his hand nonchalantly and immediately began to arrange the work schedule of the boy and girl. You should still be in the trial period of life now, right? Then, brave young man, remember to take the girl to clear the copy of Phoenix Academy's Fierce Demon King every day. Okay, copy, is the reason why ordinary humans can't communicate with Shuyuni cartoonists really because their thinking is no longer on the same frequency. Suddenly, Sarada had such a helpless understanding deep in his heart. Enlightenment. By the way, uncle, why do you know so much? The boy with glasses pushed up his glasses, with an incredulous look on his face. Could it be that during the conversation just now, you could have guessed it just by observing it? Bar. No, I have not practiced the practice of insighting into the cause and effect of all things, and there is no such thing as the magic eye. Makoto Takahashi pointed at the group of cats surrounding him and said with an indifferent expression. The reason why I know so much is because these family members took the initiative to tell me. The boys and girls of Sakurasu seem to have accomplished the achievement of most afraid of the sudden silence of the air at the same time. After all, if careful observation and reasoning would make people feel surprised, then being able to communicate with cats would be scary, right? It is said that I can only log in to the author area. After waiting for a long time, I can't log in to the website. When I log in, it prompts a timeout. Tisk. Sure enough, he must be cursed. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 577. Since an agreement has been reached with the young lady Mashiro, it means that Makoto Takahashi has completed the tasks assigned by the new female editor Itza. It seems that the tasks entrusted by my servant cat and the editor who dare not reveal his name have been completed. Then, it's time for private matters. Makoto Takahashi looked at the witch Rina who was playing with two children, slowly pulled out the magic sword from under his white coat, and looked back and forth at the boys and girls in Sakurasu, and asked with a gloomy face, "So, everyone here, can you tell me, who is the little bastard who is favored by my witch and deserves to be cut into pieces? Who is it?" The fierce killing intent emanating from Makoto Takahashi made the boys and girls of Sakurasu shudder subconsciously, while the witch Rina, who was watching silently on the side, showed a smile that was both angry and sweet. Then, without any verbal communication, the boys and girls in Sakurasu directly focused their attention on the boy with glasses. 3 days have passed since Makoto Takahashi came to Sakurasu to complete the commission and find trouble. Although Rina the witch has not yet revealed what happened that day, based on her performance in recent days, Rina seems to be in a very happy mood. But for Uncle Ding Ding on the assistant side and the guard of Mashiro girl, the past 3 days have been quite depressing. As for the reason, it is naturally because of the fancy dog-fooding behavior of a certain Chuyunabaku manga artist who calls himself the Demon King and Rina, who is called the witch. Is the dessert delicious, dear? Although it didn't make the dessert shine, I did feel the love in it. It tastes pretty good. Should I say that you are worthy of being my witch? Ha 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 ha. Although he didn't look up to observe the shameless witch feeding the Demon King behavior of Rina and Takahashi Makoto, the sweet atmosphere created by the two people's conversation was enough to cause thousands of points of critical damage to Uncle Ding Ding who was painting the background and the boy Sarada who was waiting for Mashiro. Sarada-kun, right? You can't do this. Looking at the boy with a blushing face and lowered head, Uncle Ding Ding kindly gave advice in a low voice out of humanitarian assistance. For Aiken, you have to learn to face this daily mode of getting along. In short, you just have to get used to it. Is it always like this, they? It seems that he got unexpected help, which slightly diverted the attention of the boy Sarada. After a moment, he secretly pointed in the direction of Takahashi Makoto and Rina, and then whispered to Uncle Ding Ding, "Is this the so-called adult world? No, Rina-chan shouldn't be like this normally. I guess something happened recently, and Rina-chan is in a good mood. Uncle Ding Ding put on a reasoning posture of professional bleach elementary school student, and said to the boy Sarada, as I am also an experienced person, as for Aiken, he can show affection with Rina-chan in various ways. I can only say that although the guy's behavior has been a little abnormal recently, it is generally considered quite normal. He. Sarada. The two people who were talking were interrupted by the girl Mashiro. The girl Mashiro, holding a pineapple bun, stared at the boy Sarada without concealing her eyes, and said calmly with an expressionless face, "Hey me." Huh, out of surprise, or maybe he was frightened by the bold words of the girl Mashiro. In short, the boy Sarada fell into a dazed state. Tisk, the kids nowadays, really can't be underestimated. Uncle Ding Ding looked at the dazed boy and the expressionless girl with a look that said, "You, a guy with thick eyebrows and big eyes, actually betrayed the organization," and said with gritted teeth. The white coat said. The girl Mashiro seemed a little dissatisfied with the performance of the boy Sarada, and muttered in a low voice with a blank expression, "After completing the work, you should be rewarded, Sarada's feeding reward." "Yeah, that's right, that's it." As the mastermind behind the scenes and silently watching everything happen, Takahashi Makoto teased in a rather annoying voice at this time, "Boy, I can only help you so far. By the way, I'll give you a friendly reminder, after the feeding reward, it is best to use the legendary pat the head skill again. I heard that this is the best combination skill for brushing intimacy." Feeding. Mashiro girl put the pineapple bread into the hands of the young Kota boy, tilted her head and paused for a moment, then spoke again, "And pat the head." I know. Although his face was red, Kota boy finally used the combination skills of feeding and pat the head on the girl Mashiro under the gaze of everyone. By the way, is this the legendary embodiment of the saying no but being honest tsundere? It seems that after this battle, the intimacy between the two seems to have increased a lot. Looking at the shy look of Kota boy, Takahashi Makoto showed a happy smile on his face. It turns out that kicking someone when they are down is the most loving. We have helped these two little guys, who already have feelings for each other, to improve their intimacy. In a sense, this behavior of ours is a great merit, right, Your Highness the Witch? Yeah, Rina nodded in agreement with Takahashi Makoto's evaluation, but, it seems Nanami-chan has no chance. Hey, after Takahashi Makoto heard about a certain girl that Rina mentioned again, the look on his face became a little unnatural. After noticing Rina's interested gaze, a certain middle-class manga artist was very decisive. He chose to change the topic, which, about your junior. Ah. Are you remembering the previous incident again? Rina hugged Takahashi Makoto without anyone else, with a happy smile on her face. Although it was my fault for not disclosing the specific situation before, but after seeing your behavior before, I will not apologize, my dear. Tisk, so, is this the essence of a witch? Although there was a helpless expression on his face, Makoto Takahashi hugged Rina into his arms. What I want to say is, I will ask a certain the four-eyed fox recommends that child, but it's definitely not now. After all, that child still needs a period of improvement in practice. From a professional point of view, Nanami-chan still has a long way to go. It's not just me, even Azu-chan feels the same way. Rina snuggled into Takahashi Makoto's arms and whispered. Whispering in the ear of a middle-class manga artist, "But, is this your compensation for mistaking Nanami-chan for your love rival, my dear?" "No, this is all Stein's, Gate's choice. At this time, you should decisively use this god to reply." Looking at Makoto Takahashi and Rina's all kinds of sweet displays of affection, and then looking at the various feeding and head touching of Mashiro girl and Sarada boy next to him, Uncle Tintin took a deep breath, and then he let out a helpless sigh. "Really? I am also married and have children. Oh, forget it, I'd better concentrate on completing my work." Uncle Tintin, in fact, when faced with this kind of crazy daily life of showing affection and spreading dog food, you can definitely learn from a certain uncle who is maniac about showing off his wife and daughter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 578. Although showing affection and spreading dog food can stimulate Uncle Tintin on the side of his assistant and give Makoto Takahashi a lot of pleasurable experience, a certain middle-level cartoonist is still very credible, so since Makoto Takahashi accepted it comes from the commission from the editor of the weekly magazine, so after completing the manga manuscript every day, it is only natural to take time to teach Mashiro Shoujo about changing careers as a cartoonist. Looking at Makoto Takahashi, who was observing his manga manuscript, although the Mashiro girl still kept an expressionless expression, she was actually very nervous, although the Mashiro girl held Sarada boy's hand tightly and wanted to she used this to divert her attention and relieve her nervousness. However, whenever she saw Makoto Takahashi frowning, the Mashiro girl would grab Sarada boy's hand and subconsciously squeeze it tightly. Therefore, for Sarada boy at this moment, he is probably experiencing the legendary feeling of pain and happiness. The plot of the manga always feels a bit strange. Looking at the manga manuscript provided by Mashiro Shoujo, Takahashi Makoto held his chin and muttered in a low voice, although I understand the general plot, but, I always feel, the plot jumps are a bit exaggerated. Right, right. Uncle, you think so too, right? Sarada's eyes flashed, and his face seemed to have a smile of I finally found an organization. In the comic on the previous page, the heroine was still with the second male lead. The fight was intense, but on the next page of the comic, the heroine and the hero fell in love directly. Why are you looking at me with that strange look? Did I say something wrong, uncle? Boy, the reason why you can't read Mashiro Shoujo's manga is simply because, boy, you don't understand people's hearts at all. Makoto Takahashi looked at Sarada boy sympathetically and pointed at the manga manuscript in his hand, slowly said, Mashiro Shoujo just omits some boring processes. According to the professional terminology of the game, Mashiro Shoujo's comic plot is actually to completely abandon the side plot, go directly to the main plot, and skip the leapfrog and fight monsters. Model. Yeah, regarding Takahashi Makoto's comment, the Mashiro girl seemed to have found a soulmate. A glimmer of expectation flashed in her eyes. The hair on her head shook, and she complained to the Sarada boy who had entered a speechless state. Get up, Sada, doesn't understand people's hearts. I don't understand people's hearts. I'm so sorry, Sarada boy, who was criticized by two cartoonists one after another, suddenly felt bad. The manga of Mashiro Shoujo is actually not coherent in terms of plot, and the rhythm of the plot develops too fast, or the jump is too strong. For a qualified story, in addition to the main line of the entire story, one or several plot branches are also needed to pave the way, and Mashiro Shoujo's comics not only lack a large number of branch plots to fill in, but even the main plot lacks details. As for the plot that Mashiro Shoujo has not drawn in the manga, as an observer of the manga, you need to put yourself into the character, and then use your imagination to fill in the missing parts of the manga plot. To put it simply, you want to understand Mashiro Shoujo's comics, you must have strong brainstorming skills. Appeared. The proud skill of a certain middle-class cartoonist serious nonsense appears again. So boy, it's not that Mashiro Shoujo's comics are not exciting, but that most ordinary people simply don't have the ability to understand them. Do you understand? But comics like that. Can comics that require readers to figure out the plot really be serialized? After seeing the somewhat disappointed look in the girl next to him, Sarada boy decided to say what he said, swallowed it back again. So if Mashiro Shoujo's manga wants to be serialized. Makoto Takahashi looked at Sarada boy's hesitation, and a smile called pleasure appeared on his face. He did not point out Sarada boy's goodwill, but borrowed it. The machine changed the topic, First we need to fill in the plots that have been deliberately hidden. As for how to fill them in, please tell me, uncle in the white coat. The real white girl's eyes lit up, and she stared at Makoto Takahashi with her eyes wide open. There was a strong tendency of, if you don't tell me, I will launch a death gaze on you. Girl, do you know the so-called equivalent exchange? Just as you are now a world-class painter, the reason why you are able to achieve such an achievement is not only because of your own talent, but more importantly, because of you. He gave up the childhood that normal humans should have since he was a child, and devoted himself to practicing painting in the studio. After Makoto Takahashi's eyes wandered between the girl and the boy in front of him for a moment, he finally settled on the girl. I want to get no matter what, you must pay a corresponding price. This world is so fair and so unfair. The price? The Mashiro girl tilted her head and thought for a moment, then asked nervously, what do I have to give up? If you want to serialize comics and become a cartoonist, is that the most important thing for you now? Just after Makoto Takahashi asked this question, Uncle Tintin, who was watching the whole process, instantly felt a chill, because of the smile on Makoto Takahashi's face at this moment. Uncle Tintin said that he had seen it before, and could even say it's unforgettable. When the comic Clan was serialized, Makoto Takahashi proposed to change the plot of Shio from warm to sad. At that time, Miss Ueno Aoi, who was still an assistant to Fengguanga Yuenkuma, had argued with Makoto Takahashi for this. At that time, Makoto Takahashi also showed the same smile as now, and then teased Miss Ueno Aoi while stubbornly drawing the plot of Shio that made countless readers cry. At this moment, after seeing Makoto Takahashi showing such a smile again, Uncle Ding Ding felt a little sympathetic to the boy and girl who were facing a certain evil middle school cartoonist at the moment. Miss Ueno Aoi's situation of being played with by various ways to the point of collapse is expected to befall the boy and girl again. Uncle Ding Ding also took advantage of the conversation between the few people to quickly read the comics of Mashiro Girl. The situation is just as Makoto Takahashi said. In addition to the amazing painting skills of Mashiro Girl, the comic plot itself has many flaws. How to guide Mashiro to revise? Since reading the comic manuscript, Uncle Ding Ding has also been thinking about it. However, after seeing the smile on Makoto Takahashi's face that was called joy, Uncle Ding Ding instantly understood. Should we say that he is worthy of being the assistant of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist? Although I feel that doing this is a bit unfair to these two children, but... Uncle Ding Ding secretly observed Makoto Takahashi, and after hesitating for a long time, he still gave up and reminded the boy and girl to be careful of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. In addition to the worry that disturbing the joy of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist will lead to misfortune, Uncle Ding Ding also vaguely guessed Makoto Takahashi's intention. I hope that the means used by Chen later will not be too exaggerated. Although it is true to say so, even Uncle Ding Ding, who made a prayer, knows that for Makoto Takahashi, whose face is full of joy smiles at the moment, this hope did not exist from the beginning. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 579. Let's not mention for the moment what kind of ferocious brain augmentation skills Uncle Tintin is performing on the side. It seems you didn't understand. Looking at the confused Mashiro girl, Takahashi Makoto's pleasure became more obvious. He looked at the other party with interest and asked again in an expectant tone, so, girl yo, serializing comics and becoming a cartoonist, are they the most important things to you now? As if feeling the aura of bad taste that was rampant in Makoto Takahashi, Uncle Tintin trembled all over, and the corners of his mouth twitched and he turned his head away. You don't need to look at what is about to happen next to know, but the only thing that makes Uncle Tintin curious is that how will Makoto Takahashi please this boy and girl who have stepped into tragedy without knowing it yet? Well, that's it. The Mashiro girl didn't realize that the disaster was coming, but said in a firm tone, should we say that this is the nature of being stupid? Or should we praise people who are determined and can't be dealt with by just questioning? In that case, according to the rules of equivalent exchange. Makoto Takahashi looked at the boy named Sarada sympathetically, showed a joyful smile, and said slowly in a devilish voice, "Then girl, if I told you that the price for you to serialize your manga and become a manga artist is to leave Sarada Shounen, what would your choice be?" "No," the young boy in the sky retorted subconsciously. After noticing the strange looks from everyone, he immediately scratched his head in embarrassment, and then asked with a somewhat unnatural expression, "Uncle, are you kidding me? Why is it that I have to leave Mashiro? Whether the manga can be serialized has nothing to do with whether I am with Mashiro, right? Oh, boy, your current appearance is exactly the same as those little animals that are about to be abandoned. That pitiful look, tisk tisk tisk, it really makes me feel more pleased." Looking at Sarada, the boy reacted a little too much, so Takahashi Makoto pulled out the devil sword very quickly and put it on the opponent's neck. He narrowed his eyes and said in a joyful tone, "But now, please calm down for a while. After all, you and the girl are not at the stage where you can make decisions for each other, right? What's more, the person who is going to make the choice this time is the Mashiro girl over there." Turning a blind eye to everything around her, the Mashiro girl fell into a mysterious state of silence. Remember the equivalent exchange in the comic Metal Steel, right? Edward lost his right hand in exchange for brothers, 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 as beings of equal price to brothers, they are his own brothers. Takahashi Makoto didn't pay attention to the unpredictable Sarada boy. Instead, he turned his head to the Mashiro girl, who was still in a state of silent thinking, and slowly talked about seemingly unrelated things. "So, the current situation, it's the same. For you, a girl, which one is more important, the manga and the manga artist, or the boy Sarada?" "Both," Mashiro said, a surprising answer, and it was also an answer that made Sarada boy look happy. "Hey! Is this really the answer? But girl, this time the situation is a bit special. What if you are destined to only be able to choose one of them?" Makoto Takahashi seemed not surprised by the Mashiro girl's answer, and left it helplessly. He curled his lips, still maintaining a joyful smile on his face. "You must know that things in the world are always not as expected. Although the choose one from two mode is a bit cruel, it is considered to be better than choose one from more. The industry has a conscience, you can't be too kind. I want to draw comics, I want to be a manga artist." Mashiro girl stared at Makoto Takahashi without giving up, her tone filled with unshakable determination. "I also want to be with Sarada." "Hey, uncle, what you're doing is too cruel, isn't it?" Even though the devil's sword was placed on his neck, the Sarada boy showed quite courage. Yes, at least at this time the Sarada boy, and dared to roar loudly at Makoto Takahashi, "Why do you have to force Mashiro in this way? Why do you have to force Mashiro to make a choice? Young man, do you want to try to die for once?" Makoto Takahashi squinted his eyes and said very dangerous words in a joking tone. "Eh? This?" The courage that Sarada boy had just generated was instantly shattered by the cold touch on his neck. "I say Aiken, that's about it, right?" Uncle Ding Ding on the side seemed a little unable to bear it, and finally couldn't help but said, "Although I vaguely guessed that this is your teaching method, I always feel that, the method is a little bit, it's over." "Hey! Tintin Gi-san, why do you interrupt this pleasurable game?" Makoto Takahashi took off the magic sword and began to complain with a face filled with resentment. "This makes me pleasant the scene, it is obviously very rare to have such an opportunity." "Ah, I knew it was like this." After seeing Makoto Takahashi's performance, Uncle Tintin put his hand on his forehead helplessly. "That's about it, right? I think if you continue to play, you'll get this." The two children brought psychological shadow. "Tisk, psychological shadow or something, don't use such vulgar words to describe it." It seems that he is quite dissatisfied with what Uncle Ding Ding said. Takahashi Makoto curled his lips in disdain. "That is what my Phoenix Inner Kuma has always pursued, if possible, I think it is better to describe it as truth. Tisk, what kind of bad taste is this? Eh? What's going on? The young boy Sarada was a little confused. He touched his neck that had just touched the demon sword and was a little confused. Just now, was that a joke? Girl, do you remember the feeling of asking you to choose one of two? Takahashi Makoto ignored the confused boy Sarada and said to the girl Mashiro, choose a cartoonist, or choose Sarada, or be greedy and want to do both. Use your brush to record everything you think at that time, and then show it through comics. What happened just now? A gleam flashed in Mashiro's eyes, and after hesitating for a moment, she asked uncertainly, all. Well, when you show everything that happened today, no matter how big or small, in comics, the missing and hidden plots in your comics will also be filled in. Takahashi Makoto stood up and pulled his white coat, and bowed slightly to the boy and girl in front of him. Excuse me. Today's Demon King Phoenix Inner Kishin style teaching ends here. I'm sorry for not entertaining you enough. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 580. After the thoughtful Mashiro left with the nearly collapsed Sarada, Uncle Ding Ding found that the atmosphere was a bit awkward when he was alone with a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. Hey, Aiken, you are doing this. After hesitating for a moment, Uncle Ding Ding couldn't help but speak to break the stiff atmosphere. Don't you think it's a bit too much? Eh? Too much? Ding Ding Ji-san, are you kidding? Takahashi Makoto looked at his assistant Uncle Ding Ding in surprise and said in disbelief, it's just this level, you've already started to say it's too much. Tisk, Ding Ding Ji-san, this is just the beginning, okay. Suddenly I feel that the editorial department gave you this job, which is a completely wrong choice. After Uncle Ding Ding pondered for a moment, he decisively complained, although I don't know whether your teaching method, Aiken, is effective, but I am sure that the girl named Mashiro will definitely be led astray by you, Aiken, in the near future. This is exactly my job, is also my original goal. In response to Uncle Ding Ding's ridicule, a middle school manga artist in a white coat took it as a boast, and a happy smile appeared on his face, or, this is the choice of Steins Gate. Compared to Mashiro. Uncle Ding Ding shook his head helplessly, and sighed weakly, I am more worried about the future of Rin and CG now. Pollution or blasphemy that originally belonged to God, this is the so-called demon god. Ignoring Uncle Ding Ding's melancholy eyes, Takahashi Makoto switched from looking up at the sky and thinking about life to thumbs up to comfort people, and said confidently, so real man. Whether it is Rin or CG, they are destined to become demon gods who dominate human fear in the future. So, the topic gradually shifted from how to guide Mashiro to become a manga artist to the weird route of two fathers exchanging their children's education experience. It seems like that. I don't know whether the theory said by the cartoonist Feng Guangyuan Kuma is useful, nor do I care whether the method of a certain middle school cartoonist is scientific, and I don't care whether the teaching of the uncle in the white coat will lead me to a strange path. For the girl Mashiro, since Takahashi Makoto has guided her as a senior and pointed out the way forward, it is worth trying and working hard. So after returning to Sakurasu, this genius painter who lacks common sense in life rushed in front of the computer and began to concentrate on the career change of becoming a recorder of daily trivia, even eating, which is a necessary survival event for humans, was forced by the boy Sarada, who finally recovered, and Mashiro took a little time to complete it. Perhaps the reason why Mashiro can become a world-class cartoonist is because whenever she involves painting, she will have this kind of concentration that is almost forgetting to eat and sleep, or in other words, the girl named Mashiro's obsession with becoming a cartoonist is too strong. If someone without this gift or talent can achieve this level, they may not necessarily achieve such an impressive result as Mashiro, but at least they can achieve some success. Of course, more often than not, humans either use various excuses to comfort and paralyze themselves and die midway, ahem, it should be giving up midway, or, because of excessive concentration and neglect of the body, they achieve the achievement of dying of illness at the door of the hospital and complete the true collapse midway. Mashiro followed the method proposed by Makoto Takahashi and began to recomplete the comic manuscript, and the boy Sarada, who read Owner Caretaker and wrote Toy Servant, was extremely skeptical of the method proposed by the uncle in the white coat at the beginning. The wisdom of ordinary people. Colonel Chu's famous saying sounds full of sarcasm, but the cruel thing is, it is indeed a very realistic statement. The thoughts of a genius are not something that ordinary people can guess. If you use ordinary people's way of thinking to guess the thoughts of a genius, the final result will either be like a captain who was completely fooled, or you will not be able to understand the essence of the problem at all, and you will fall into a world of contradictions and logical confusion. To put it simply, if you use a dog's way of thinking to guess a cat's thoughts, you will end up with a confused mindset of a dog is not a dog, a cat is not a cat. Therefore, the young man Sarada felt that the unreliable, unscientific, and even quite weird guidance of a certain uncle in a white coat had no effect on the girl Mashiro. In fact, whenever the young man Sarada recalled everything he had experienced before, he would always have a feeling like the girl Mashiro is about to go astray. The earnest persuasion was useless. Mashiro would always listen and then either take out her sketchbook and start drawing, or she would suddenly fall asleep to replenish her energy from long hours of drawing, or she would completely immerse herself in drawing the comics and enter a state of emptiness where she ignores space and time. Food inducements such as donuts and pineapple buns were equally useless. Faced with the temptation of delicious food, or in other words, the food she likes, the Mashiro girl either seizes the food with lightning speed and eats it directly, or she is too focused on completing the work of completing the manga manuscript, and starts a similar business as clothes. The girl state of reaching out for food and opening mouth. In the end, Sarada boy had to stop this behavior because Wallet-kun ran away from home. But to put it simply, it's still the same sentence. The boy named Sarada really underestimated Mashiro's obsession with becoming a manga artist. After experiencing a chaotic life for a few days, Mashiro girl finally completed the previously submitted manga manuscript according to the requirements of a certain middle-class cartoonist. Not only that, but because of Sarada boy's series of actions, Mashiro girls, a lot of material has been added to the comic manuscript. Sure enough, whether it's comics or novels, all the plot materials come from that life called daily life. Sarada. Mashiro girl held a thick stack of completed manga manuscripts, maintaining her usual way of speaking, expressing her true meaning in the shortest words, looking at the corners of her mouth with anticipation. The twitching Sarada boy said, "Let's go to the uncle in the white coat." Oh, Sarada-kun actually got named one day. Sarada boy senior, the boy with glasses, pushed up his glasses, showed a smile minors shouldn't understand, but everyone understands, and said jokingly, "I will explain it to teacher Kinksuan, so, you don't have to come back at night." The young boy in the sky, whose face instantly turned red, made this unexplained cry. By the way, does Sarada boy really not understand, or has he already understood the hint from his senior that I can only help you so far? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 581. When Makoto Takahashi was looking through the manga manuscript completed by Mashiro Shoujo, everyone present couldn't help but hold their breath and concentrate because of the atmosphere. Whether Takahashi Makoto's weird method can successfully transform the Mashiro girl from a genius painter to a cartoonist with genius drawing ability, this is what Uncle Tintin, who is the assistant, is thinking in silence. Question. Can Mashiro Shoujo improve the problems that appeared in the previous manga manuscripts, such as the plot jumps too much and is not coherent enough? This is what the escort, Sarada Shounen, is worried about in silence. As for the Mashiro girl, if she could really infer the girl's thoughts from her expressionless face, maybe such a being could become the next god of strategy, right? Is the plot of the manga based on everything that happened here that day? The degree of restoration is quite high. Well, it feels a bit like that. Makoto Takahashi put down the manga manuscript and asked what he was waiting for. The three people gave a positive comment. It's just a little bit far from the level I expected. Girl, you still need to continue to practice. That's great, Mashiro. Perhaps the only one who cheered with such excitement at this time was Sara. Uncle Tintin took the comic manuscript handed over by Makoto Takahashi and was observing. It's just a comic manuscript. Uncle Tintin, do you need to start this exaggerated facial performance? It's not like after eating Yao Wang's food, you will have the kind of hallucination where your body is completely out of control. That's it. The Mashiro girl seemed a little dissatisfied with Takahashi Makoto's evaluation. After hesitating for a moment, she tilted her head and asked, "White coat, what else?" "Girl, you have to carve out your own path in the future." Makoto Takahashi looked at the girl in front of him and said seriously, "Every cartoonist who calls himself a god has his own path forward, and who is willing to use it. The goal to strive for throughout your life. What others teach and guide is not your own. Of course, it does not mean that it is not good to learn from other people's fake, but when you use such fake, the soul's the degree of fit cannot reach the highest synchronization rate." "Hey, uncle, what are you talking about?" Sarada, who had recovered from his excitement, had been silently listening to what Makoto Takahashi was saying to Mashiro. "Special teaching, but the problem is," the boy Sarada said, that the more he listened, the more confused he became. For Takahashi Makoto, or for the name Phoenix in Murama, Sarada boy always has a certain amount of awe and admiration in his heart. In addition to the fact that Takahashi Makoto is now the leader of Mashiro's shoujo manga, what's more important is that the name Phoenix Academy Fierce is a legendary existence in the gaming world. It's not that he has a transcendent status like a god of strategy, but because most of the games he participated in the design have become phenomenal existences in the gaming world. Well, at least about game designer Phoenix Academy, the relevant reports of Jigen commented like this. As for those games, especially those 18+ banned games that caused a phenomenon, the young boy Inkanta said that because he was still a minor, he could only find some simple reports, but had not played it himself. Sarada, a boy who regards being a game planner as his future goal in life, naturally hopes to learn something related to game planning, while Takahashi Makoto educates Mashiro after learning about the past experience of Phoenix Academy. Knowledge. Let's not mention how slim the unrealistic hope of the young boy is, but at least this attitude of hard work is completely worthy of recognition. So, there was an incident where Sarada boy got in when Mashiro girl was receiving a special assignment from a certain middle-class manga artist. Humph, the wisdom of mortals. Makoto Takahashi brushed aside the confused Sarada boy over there, with a disdainful smile on his face. "Young man, have you ever seen a mere ant discuss the bitterness of life with a human? Just a mere ant. A mere mortal who can't even read a comic book dares to talk to a being like me. Huh, at least Yoshida has spent these years under this kind of ridicule and contempt, so Sarada boy, just take it lightly." Well, I guess I understand. Compared to Sarada boy, Mashiro girl has a higher visual understanding. At least Mashiro girl can understand Takahashi Makoto's unclear words. Sada is indeed an idiot. And Mashiro girl didn't seem to forget that she used the mockery and contempt skill again after Takahashi Makoto, causing tons of damage to Sarada boy. The existence that can be seen but cannot be seen can be shown through comic manuscripts. Takahashi Makoto did not continue to pay attention to the tangled boy over there, but stared at the thing in front of him seriously. The Mashiro girl sighed inexplicably. "Girl, it's amazing that you can do this, or maybe you are the only one who can do this." "White coat, you can't do it either." The hair on the white girl's head shook, and for the first time, a look of doubt appeared on her face. Although according to common sense, men should have responded angrily to this comment. Takahashi Makoto spread his hands helplessly, with a bitter smile on his face, but whether based on the facts or some other prohibited matters factors, if the entire comic reaches that level, I can only admit that I really can't do it. Eh? Even you, an uncle, said so, listening to the conversation between Takahashi Makoto and the girl Mashiro. The young boy Kota showed an unbelievable look on his face, his eyes were a little dazed, and he couldn't help but mutter to himself in a low voice, "Sure enough, it turns out that Mashiro is so powerful. This little girl named Mashiro, of course she is very powerful, that Uncle Ding Ding, who finally got rid of the fantasy state of drug-inducing manga draft, looked at Mashiro with a complicated expression, and said to the mumbling boy Sarada, it's really as Makoto said, the only person who can do that, maybe she is the only one. So. Sarada looked at the middle school manga artist and his assistant who gave Mashiro a high evaluation in front of him, and asked a little depressed, you have been praising Mashiro for being great, what are you talking about? The resonance of the soul between the manga artist and the manga, or call it the heart of the manga, Makoto Takahashi's answer, still made Sarada confused as always. The manga draft is full of the manga artist's emotions. Uncle Ding Ding's evaluation is relatively easier to understand, it seems that this is the case for Sarada. This. But in fact, it seems that Kota is still a little difficult to accept this statement. When a chef makes a dish, he will put his personal emotions into it, or call it a personal mark, or call it the heart of the chef. Takahashi Makoto took the comic manuscript of Mashiro and handed it to Kota, and explained, when a cartoonist completes a comic, he will also put his strong emotions into the comic. Mashiro can do it? That's right, when I saw Mashiro's paintings before, I could feel some indescribable feelings. Kota took the comic manuscript and showed a look of confusion on his face, but uncle, according to you, as a popular weekly cartoonist, you should be able to do it, right? I can do it, but I can also say I can't do it. Although I can integrate part of my soul into it, and even engrave the technique of driving the heart in the comic manuscript, if it is only to this extent, of course I can do it. Takahashi Makoto turned around and picked up his own comic manuscript from the desk and placed it in front of the boy Sarada, but for the situation like Mashiro girl, making the whole comic like this from beginning to end, I am willing but unable to do it. Well, the white coat comic. Mashiro girl nodded gently, saying with an expression of agreement, sometimes, it is indeed impossible to do it. Have feelings. That being said, but girl, you still have a lot to learn. As for Mashiro's comments, Takahashi Makoto, who knew his own business, did not intend to explain too much, but showed a pleasant smile. I have already felt the anger in the comics you brought, so it should be the turn of other emotions next, right? Other emotions. Mashiro hesitated for a moment, then turned her gaze to Sarada. Why do I suddenly have a bad premonition? Sarada, who was about to flip through Mashiro's comics, suddenly felt a chill, looked up at the three people who ignored him, and was embarrassed. He smiled awkwardly, wrong, an illusion. Patting the shoulder of the young boy Sarada sympathetically, Uncle Ding Ding tried his best to suppress the twitching corners of his mouth, and tried to squeeze out a sympathetic look at the other party. Greed, jealousy, arrogance. Takahashi Makoto, like a demon who instigated humans to sign a contract, recommended it to the girl Mashiro in a joyful tone. These are the original sins engraved in the depths of the human soul. Girl, don't you want to try them one by one, and then add more colorful colors to your comics? Silence is the best answer. At least now the light of expectation in the eyes of the girl Mashiro answered Takahashi Makoto like this. Readers who have some unrelated associations because of the title, you need to reflect on yourself and purify your soul. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 582. The world is filthy again. Hearing Makoto Takahashi's sudden emotion, Uncle Tintin twitched the corner of his mouth. After hesitating for a moment, he did not intend to communicate with Makoto Takahashi, who had turned on the Frenzy 2 mode, but continued to lower his head and make I want to concentrate on drawing comics, not to mention that if I deal with Makoto Takahashi at this time, I will face the extremely cruel mental attack of a certain second-grade cartoonist. More importantly, because in order to guide education before that Mashiro girl has greatly delayed the progress of the manga series by manga artist Hohoin Kyumeiji, and now we really need time to complete the previous work. So whether it is from a work perspective or from a personal perspective, not communicating with a certain middle-level cartoonist is an absolutely correct choice. However, it is a pity that even though Uncle Tintin is unwilling to pay attention to Takahashi Makoto, a certain second-grade cartoonist has taken the persistence of never giving up until the goal is achieved to the extreme. Living in this world, you will inevitably suffer from the erosion of this world. Makoto Takahashi said to himself as if he was sighing while holding a pen and using the super speed skill, from the erosion of this world. The damage caused not only damages the body, but more seriously, it also severely damages the origin of the soul. Ignore it. You absolutely cannot choose to deal with Aiken at this time. Uncle Tintin, who had already awakened, just looked up at Makoto Takahashi, and then continued to lower his head and silently complete his work. In a sense, Uncle Tintin is really a person with a strong sense of professional responsibility. Assistant. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, a certain second-level cartoonist screamed, while using the brush in his hand to draw a stroke on the manuscript paper. If Takahashi Makoto had a sword in his hand instead of a brush, he would have drawn it visually. Has the comic manuscript paper been split or torn? Obviously, I am a non-human fantasy race. I am obviously supposed to be the class that rules the human race. I am obviously a being that humans can only look up to, worship and admire, but I, the arrogant manga artist Hohoin Koshin, would actually do this to a mere human being. Human beings are envious and so-called jealous of a mere underage girl. So the reason why Takahashi Makoto is abnormal today, is because of jealousy? Uncle Tintin, who was finishing the comic manuscript, paused for a moment, and glanced thoughtfully at Makoto Takahashi, who was still in a state of self-pity. After much hesitation, he still didn't say anything, but just let out a long sigh. Think about it, even though your grasp of the comic plot is very poor, the comic manuscripts are full of spirituality, and the paintings that can arouse emotional resonance after reading. She is obviously just a minor girl, but he has done something that many adults, even many geniuses, cannot do. From this point of view, not to mention Takahashi Makoto would find it unbelievable. Even Uncle Tintin now thinks back on the comics he read before and feels that his life has been in vain all these years. Tisk, I should have given up on the original sin that mankind has long ago. It should have been like this. Makoto Takahashi suddenly threw the brush in his hand on the table as if he was having an attack of rage. No, 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 the reason why I have this kind of envy and jealousy now is probably because I have been polluted and eroded by this muddy world. Well, that must be the case. In fact, it is not me who is really at fault, but world. I say Chang, escaping can't solve any problems. Uncle Ding Ding, who originally didn't plan to communicate with a certain middle school cartoonist, finally couldn't help but said, and as a cartoonist, the level of drawing is not being as good as a world-class painter. There's nothing hard to accept about this. In comparison, it's even more difficult for a person who has a world-class painter level to want to be a cartoonist. Isn't that hard to accept? Hey. To be despised by Jisang, who is just an assistant. Makoto Takahashi curled his lips. It's really unpleasant to say. I knew it would be like this. Upon hearing this, Uncle Ding Ding sighed helplessly, tapped the comic manuscript on the table, and said in a worried tone, although I know you are a little envious of that girl and even I feel jealous, but now is the time to worry about this. According to the previous serialization progress, we have fallen behind on 2 full days of comic manuscripts. Uncle Tintin not only ignored Takahashi Makoto's ridicule, but also reminded him of the progress of several comic series. Of course, don't think that Uncle Tintin is good-tempered. If any other cartoonist had done this, Uncle Tintin would have been furious. The reason why he adopts this almost dare to be angry but dare not speak out attitude towards Makoto Takahashi is not only because Uncle Tintin has long been accustomed to the character of a certain middle-class cartoonist after many years of cooperation, but more importantly, Uncle Tintin in certain incidents, I witnessed the bravery of a certain middle-class cartoonist. When faced with an opponent that cannot be defeated, it is natural to speak tactfully and be cowardly. Man. It's just 2 days of manga drafts. Makoto Takahashi's expression changed at every turn. His face was obviously full of tangles and depression just now, but now he was laughing so hard. I stayed up all night to catch up on the work and got it done quickly. What's more, facing a mere cat belonging to me, I don't think that guy has the courage and strength to dare to confront me head on. Anyway, as long as you are happy, Chang, Uncle Ding Ding twitched the corner of his mouth and said with aggrieved words. Hey, Tintin-ji-san, what do you think of my acting skills just now? Makoto Takahashi suddenly rushed to Uncle Tintin, and while adjusting his white coat, he asked expectantly, isn't it very realistic? Acting. After Uncle Ding Ding hesitated for a moment, he felt severe pain from somewhere that cannot be described, and a helpless smile appeared on his face. In other words, what you just said, Chang, is right. All the various expressions of envy and jealousy of a pure white girl can be expressed. Yes, after Makoto Takahashi replied matter-of-factly, he also noticed the depressed smile on Uncle Tintin's face, and a smile called joy immediately appeared on his face. Oh, I didn't expect Tintin-ji-san you actually believed it. I originally thought that my beloved cat would be the first victim. This is really, sure enough, everything is Stein's, Gates' choice. Am I being shot innocently? Uncle Tintin sighed helplessly. As for the reason why you did this, Chang, well, I won't ask in detail. Actually, this is not a forbidden matter. I can tell you, Tintin-ji-san, a cold light flashed in Takahashi Makoto's eyes, and he asked Uncle Tintin, hey, Tintin-ji-san, do you still remember that I am receiving guidance? What was the original plan before this mission? Well, I remember that you were planning to join forces with A.G. Shinzuma to start a new series. Uncle Tintin suddenly paused in the middle of his words. After hesitating for a moment, the uncle next to his assistant gave a weird look in his eyes. Looking at Makoto Takahashi, I mean Chang, are you trying to take revenge through your so-called acting skills just now? Tintin-ji-san, you are worthy of being my chosen assistant from among thousands of humans. After Makoto Takahashi boasted about Uncle Tintin, a sneer appeared on his face. That guy from My Familiar Cat actually used organization as a backing to specially arrange and release some unreasonable tasks for me. Humph. Do you think you can stop my dominance with this method? It's so sweet. So. Uncle Ding Ding had already started to cover his face. By taking advantage of this assignment from the weekly editorial department, Chang, you deliberately pretended to be stimulated by the talented girl in painting, and then deceived the Yoshida family by the way. Let the cat in my family mistakenly think that I have been hit, and have a psychological shadow, and even plan to give up my identity as a cartoonist. Makoto Takahashi showed an almost broken smile. Then let the guy in the cat in my family, I gradually develop self-blame, get lost and immersed in guilt, and my heart is gradually eroded by dark emotions, until the whole person is completely ruined. Tisk, 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 that kind of pleasant scene, just imagining it makes me look forward to it. It's really too much. Uncle Tintin looked at Makoto Takahashi with contempt, and then slowly said, but if Chang, you want to interpret that suffering state more realistically, I think you can use not yet finished as an excuse to meet the next deadline a day or two later than usual. This approach, Ding Ding Ji-san, I guess you are more cruel than me, Makoto Takahashi thought for a moment with a smile, then nodded decisively in agreement, but tinting Ji-san, let me tell you, your idea is awesome. So, Yoshida-kun, who is far away in the editorial office, have you realized the reason why you keep sneezing?